Over 95% of your website visitors will never buy something from you. The browse abandonment flow helps to convert more of those browsers into buyers, but most browse abandonment flows feel like they have abandonment issues. They feel super needy and super desperate. And that's because most brands get this flow completely wrong. In this video, I'm gonna run through some of the common mistakes people make with the browse abandonment flow, what you need, the exact email structure that we use for our 7- and 8-figure brand partners, and the split test you can use to dramatically improve the performance of your flow. So let's dive in. All right, so the main purpose of this flow is for people who have hit your website, hit a product page, but didn't add to cart, didn't initiate checkout, didn't purchase, and just didn't make it any further along in the process. What is really important here is just to consider people's level of intent. They're not going to be quite as interested as someone who has added to cart or initiated checkout, and definitely not someone who has purchased, but there's still a degree of interest. What we recommend doing here is just having it as a little bit of a softer touch point. Usually this isn't going to be like a 7 email flow. It might be 2 or 3 or 4, maybe a little bit longer depending on how well it's performing. So the main purpose of this flow is to get them back onto the site and ultimately to get them to add to cart and then finally purchase. Okay, so shifting gears here into objections. Now, people who viewed a certain product may or may not actually be interested in the product. The core objections that people have at this stage in the funnel is that they might just have a product related objection. Like they may not even be interested in the product. They might be uncertain about the product fit or the size. Could be like there's a lack of detail on your product page. Maybe there's too many options. Maybe it's like you have a single product and then there's a ton of different options and customizations and things available. It can kind of just create decision fatigue if it doesn't check all the boxes for someone. If it's just like, hey, you know what, this isn't the thing I'm looking for, or if it's concerns about performance or results. Now, this could be true for a brand if you're selling supplements or any sort of thing that's going to help someone achieve a desired outcome. The other thing could be trust issues, right? That doesn't just happen in relationships. It also happens here. Lack of social proof will go a really long way to just degrade trust. If there are no reviews, if people can't even find you when they Google you, that's going to go a long way to degrading that social proof. If there's no return or refund policy, and if there's no like kind of in-use demonstrations, it's really helpful if you have a product that might take a little bit more for someone to use. It's not just like, hey, here's some soup, or hey, here's a shirt. People don't need a how to put on a shirt. However, they might need a little bit more explanation if it comes to like a supplement or something that requires a little bit more brain power to actually use. And big thing here, we want to make sure we're building the strategy out for the lowest common denominator. So even if you're like, this is an absolute no-brainer, it's not hard, people will 1000% ask a question that makes no sense and that you have on your website even. So the more questions you can handle and the more places you can put them, the better. The last thing is pricing. So sometimes if people are doing comparison shopping, pricing just might be an issue. Usually this comes up at the add to cart, maybe initiate checkout phase. They might just be in an information gathering phase here too. So if the pricing is too high, or if it's a very high price product and maybe you have a lower price tier available too, maybe that's an opportunity, maybe not in the first email, but maybe in the second email or maybe the third email, you can kind of show them like, hey, here's a different option if you're looking for something a little bit cheaper. So that could be another option there. Okay, so how do you actually build it out in Klaviyo? Well, the first thing is the trigger. Now, I'm going to show you how to do this in Klaviyo as well, but I want to run through it quickly in here first. So the first thing is the trigger is when someone viewed a product page. And what you want to do is make sure that you have some flow filters on here so all the people aren't getting this email. So the flow filters we want to add in are placed order 0 times since starting this flow, started checkout 0 times since starting this flow, added to cart 0 times since starting this flow. And then the other ones that you might want to add in is bounced email 0 times since starting this flow and has not been in this flow in the last 14 days. The other cool thing you can do here is conditional splits. Now you can do this based on a whole variety of different things, but if it makes sense for your brand to do this, you might want to do it for a category or a collection. It could be like apparel versus electronics if you sell both of those things. It could be supplements, right? It could be if you're selling supplements, maybe you have weight loss supplements and you have muscle gain supplements. You might want to split it out based off of those things. You could also split it out based off of people's desired outcome. If you're using a zero-party data pop-up, that's where you can gather a little bit more information about people and then segment out based off of that as well. And another one you can do is just by customer type. So this could be new customers who have never purchased before. It could be returning customers, a variety of different things we could do here. Okay, now in order to actually build it out in Klaviyo, it's actually really straightforward. All you need to do is go to flows on the left-hand side here. You're gonna wanna click create flow, and then you're gonna wanna search for flows. So you can actually see this browse abandonment one pops up. If it doesn't pop up for you, you can search for it right there. Click on this one. The trigger is going to be viewed product. You can rename it with whatever you want. It's going to spit out a template that looks kind of like this. Going to let it load. So it's just going to do this. Usually what we'll do is we'll actually add a conditional split in here. So we'll say, let's test out like 2 hours versus 30 minutes. And this really depends on your product. What I do, and also actually your traffic. So what I'd probably recommend doing is testing out wildly different things here. So 30 minutes maybe versus 2 hours or versus 4 hours even. If you have a ton of traffic, then you can create multiple different conditional splits. So you could do like 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, that kind of thing. For the purposes of most brands, usually a shorter time frame is going to work better. Now what you're going to want to do is just add in those flow filters. So it's going to create these flow filters automatically for you. The next thing you're going to want to do is just add in the other ones that I mentioned. It's pretty straightforward. You just kind of follow this template here. And then like I said, if you do want to create additional conditional splits based off of people's properties or based off of like, hey, have they purchased before? All you need to do there again is go and create a conditional split. And then you would say, like, let's say we're going to do someone has purchased before. So I'm going to say what someone has or has not done. I'm going to say placed order, and I'm going to say at least once overall time. So now it's saying anyone who's placed an order at least once is going to go to this side, and then anyone who has not is going to go to this side. So a lot of different things you can do here. It really kind of depends on your brand, what you want, and also what makes sense for the brand that you have. If you're selling supplements, it's going to be radically different than if you're selling furniture, right? Maybe with furniture, what you could do is segment based off of the average value of the product, right? If it's a higher value product, you might want to have different messaging and handle different objections versus a lower value product. Okay, so in terms of email structure and flow, I'll dive right in and show you exactly how we structure this within our agency. So the first is usually just a product reminder. Remind the shopper of the product they viewed and then just encourage them to come back and check it out again. The layout here is going to be pretty simple, and basically we're going to have like a logo, header, subheader, dynamic product block that they were viewing, maybe add in the image and price and description in there, and then have the CTA. It's going to be pretty standard here, not anything crazy. Okay, so email 2 is really highlighting the key benefits of the browse product and suggesting related items to spark interest. So what we can do here, especially if you have a product in a certain collection that maybe isn't your most popular product, but you've got another really popular product in the same collection, i.e. like let's use weight loss supplements. You have one that like doesn't sell all that great, and then this one that sells really, really well. You might want to incorporate that into this browse abandonment flow as well. So a layout example here could be just like logo, and then you might have like a header that says like why XYZ product name is perfect for you. Section header, again, you might want to run through some of the benefits of the product. If you don't have a ton of different products, that's where you might want to do that. You might want to have a related product grid. This is where you're going to want to have a dynamic display of anywhere from like 3 to 6 different products with the images, pricing, etc. Now with email 3, what we're trying to do is build social proof and education. So what we want to do is build trust by showcasing some customer reviews, providing some maybe educational content about the product. Again, this is going to be very specific to your brand. Now a layout example here could be in the header, you've got, hey, this is what other people are saying about XYZ product. If you have PR, you could leverage that here as well. If you have influencers who have used this or celebrities, you can also incorporate that here. That's going to go a really long way to convert people. If you have 10,000 customers who have purchased, for example, say like, hey, join XYZ amount of customers who have purchased this before. Slightly different. Let's say it like this. Join XYZ happy customers. Review carousel. So again, you could just like display reviews from actual customers and verified buyers. And then also incorporate some of that educational content, how-to guides, videos, things like that. This is also kind of a point where we might incorporate a sale or promotion as well. So it might be like, hey, you know what? People got to the 3rd email, they didn't purchase yet. Let's give them 10% off, that type of thing. Or we might do that in email 4, depending on how much content we have and depending on what we're actually selling for the brand. Email 4 will be that like kind of last urgency, last chance, and optional incentive here as well. Again, keeping it pretty simple in terms of layout. We'll have a header, subheader, dynamic product block, same thing there. We want to create some urgency and scarcity here, ideally, and then have the CTA, obviously. Now, the final thing here is the test that we're going to have. So the first test that we're going to have is the time delay. This is what I mentioned as we were building it out there. 30-minute, 1 hour, 2 hour versus 4 hour. That's going to have a big impact. That's something that we found has one of the biggest impacts for this flow. The second is going to be zero-party data segmentation. So this is just segmenting based off of the data that you gathered from either the pop-up or somewhere else in your system. Maybe you have a quiz or maybe you have a survey or something like that. The third is going to be subject line variations. If we have more people opening, then we're going to have more people clicking and ideally more people purchasing. So that's the next thing that we're going to test here. And the fourth thing is going to be CTA placement. placement. Now, CTA placement is really important. These are pretty short emails, and usually it's like very short and to the point. We're gonna wanna have a CTA in the header, and we're also gonna wanna have a CTA after that dynamic product block, especially if we're gonna have multiple products that are being promoted. We'll also wanna have a link to each one of those too. The fifth one is gonna be the offer and discount timing. So for example, if your third email is doing really well, but your fourth email is not doing all that well, what you might wanna do is test out moving them to different stages or different timings. So you might wanna move email 4 to email 3 and email 3 to email 4, just to test that out, see if there's any difference there, and see if things improve or degrade at all. And then the final thing we'll test here is the offer or discount type. This is going to vary depending on what you can actually offer for your brand, but if we're gonna have a discount, if we're gonna have some sort of incentive for people to purchase, this is where we are going to test out different things. It could be 10% off or $10 off. It could be a free product with purchase. It could be free shipping, whole variety of different things that we can do here. But that is pretty much the end to end on how we build out the browse abandonment flow. If you do have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments, and I hope you found this helpful.